Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, coming to you 6 days a week as we interview whitetail experts and hear their traditions and personal stories of the hunt. Learn more about the latest gear, discover proven tips, and the latest strategies so you can make your next hunt a success. Now, here's your host, Bruce Hutchins.
Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is your host, Bruce Hutchins, and I'm with Kip Adams. Kip is Director of Conservation at QDMA, Quality Deer Management. Kip, welcome to the show.
Hey, Bruce, good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
And it's been a while since you have been a guest, but I wanted to talk about the rut today and going to get this, edited and out right away because, somebody said the other day, hey, full moon was October 24th. The rut started, and I go, well, maybe that's not quite so true. And as we just talked about in the warm up, to me, the rut starts basically when the buck's horns harden. They bake up from the bachelor groups in August, and all of a sudden, they're adults now, and they know something's changing in their body. Testosterone's running through their body, and things have changed. So let's start right there. What's happening to the bucks in September, and what's it all leading up to?
The big change is we're getting lower amounts of daylight each day, so that photo period is changing as we start to get to the end of summer and into fall. And then deer detect that, and what that change in photo period means is that you get a hormone change in your body. Basically, you get a big spike in testosterone. So that's what's required for bucks to harden their antlers and then shed that velvet off. And so those buddies, they've been together oftentimes since, the winter, January. They spend all winter and spring and summer together because testosterone levels are really low. All of a sudden now, they're not low anymore, and these bucks don't like each other. So antlers harden, velvet sheds off, aggression starts to increase. And you're right. That really is the kickoff to all that fun stuff that we watch during the fall. So those bucks start to break up a little bit, and they start sparring. That's really developing a pecking order. Just like dogs, chickens, and everything else, they have a very well-defined pecking order so that when they actually get into the full-blown rut, they can hurt themselves fighting, they can die fighting. So if they don't have to do that, they won't. So they spend a lot of time developing that pecking order prior to the rut to help eliminate some of that fights once things really get fast and furious.
Yeah, one thing I've heard and seen myself is that all of a sudden you'll start seeing some rub lines, and then some football size, if you will, scrapes. And, why does that happen in September?
Deer are very social animals, a lot more social than many people realize. And the best two ways for them to communicate are through rubs and scrapes. And we'll start with rubs. And, folks used to think that it's just a way for deer to get that velvet off their antlers. But actually, it's a lot more than that. Bucks have 7 glands on their body. The most important being their tarsal gland, between their hind legs. But the second most important is their forehead gland. And researchers from the University of Georgia have identified nearly 50 different pieces of information that bucks can convey about themselves through that forehead gland. So a lot of that rubbing that we see, sure, they use that some to get that velvet off. But when a buck's rubbing, what are they doing? They rub their antlers, but they also rub their forehead on that rub. Often they break the cambium layer of the tree, get the bark off it, and then rub their forehead on it. They basically are leaving their calling card there. So the other deer can then come in and receive information about that buck, oftentimes their age, their nutritional status, their dominant status, how long ago they were in the area. So rubs are a great way for bucks and does to communicate with others in an area. So, which is pretty cool. And it's their version, I guess, of their cell phone. So that is one way they communicate.
Yeah. No, is that called the orbital gland? The preorbital gland?
The preorbital gland is right here in the corner of their eye.
Okay.
The forehead gland is literally right on their forehead. And if you look at older bucks during the rut, that forehead gland often changes color. It's because of all the increased glandular activity. So it often will change color. Sometimes it will get wavy. So if you look at particularly older bucks, that often gets a little redder in there or a little darker. And actually, albino deer are a great example. Albino deer, all white, they will turn brown 2 places during the rut. Their tarsal glands and their forehead gland. So then after the rut, that forehead gland will go back to being white once all that increased activity stops. Yeah, so the forehead gland's a really cool thing that not a lot of hunters know about.
So they're leaving the scent. They're marking their territory, if you will, not unlike a cat or a dog, going around marking their territory and leaving, information about themselves for everybody else to check them out. So when they open up these small scrapes, what's that doing?
That's another way to communicate. And rather than using their forehead gland, they're actually using their tarsal gland for this one. So they'll go to these scrapes. They often, if it's an existing scrape, they often still will paw in the dirt a little bit. And that, as much as anything, attracts deer. You can go to an area that's in the woods covered with leaves, or an area in a yard that's covered with grass. You just make a big open spot of dirt, do nothing else, that will attract deer. Deer see that open spot of dirt and they almost can't go to it. They have to go and check it out because they know that's how they communicate. So in a scrape, you have that open spot of dirt, and then the most important part of the scrape often is the licking branch, which is just above the scrape, that they will, if you watch, deer will grab that, they will mouth it, they'll smell it, they will rub their preorbital gland often on that licking branch. Sometimes they will rub their forehead gland on it. So it's not just a indiscriminate mark. It's a very purposeful mark. They will, if you watch one work it, they'll smell it, they'll work it, they'll smell it, they work it until they get just the right scent on that. So they're leaving scent on the branch above the scrape. And actually, if you have a really hot scrape and you remove that licking branch, you'll stop activity at it. The licking branch is that important. Bucks have to have that licking branch to go through the whole ritual with a scrape. So fortunately, if your buddy's being mean and he knocks that branch down, you can take a branch there and just hang it back, either stick one in the ground that goes over it or hang it from a tree. Bucks don't care how it is. They just need something there to be able to work. So they work that licking branch, and then in the scrape, they smell who has been there through the urine. That's how deer can tell each other as well. But then they can, oftentimes, we will rub urinate, which is they will urinate into the scrape to leave their own scent. Well, rub urinate means they rub their hind legs together, so they're urinating over those tarsal glands. Tarsal glands are the most important gland on the deer's body. And unlike the forehead gland, there's not actually glandular activity inside the body. Those tarsal glands are just specialized hairs that capture the urine and hold some of the particles of that, some of the fat-soluble particles in that. That's what gives deer that musky smell, their unique smell during the rut. And also then that's their kind of calling card again, where other deer know who they are and they can communicate things about themselves just like at a rub, just in a different way. And we know that bucks do this year-round. It's not just during the rut. Bucks will literally scrape 12 months of the year, but they tend to do it a lot more during the breeding season. And actually, does will scrape all year long, and even fawns will scrape. Fawns will rub urinate. They're putting their scent on themselves. So all that happens throughout the year, which is one of the ways that deer are being so social and communicating with others. But it all ramps up during the rut, and that's when it really comes to a peak, when we can put a camera on those scrapes and get pictures of all kinds of different deer and really monitor what's going on in the deer.
So let's just talk about this time phase of the breeding season. So scrapes are opening up, licking branches are they're utilizing them, rubs are opening up. Now, how do I hunt that? What's the best setup? Do I just set up on a scrape, or or on food sources? Where do I need to be?
That there's a lot of hunters that have spent a lot of time sitting over a scrape and not seeing anything, and that's because research shows about 84% of all scrape use occurs at night. And so the vast majority of times that bucks and does are checking those scrapes is during dark when we can't hunt, obviously. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't kill deer there, because obviously then, somewhere around 16% of those visits are during the day. So there's a lot of hunters that have sat over a scrape and killed deer. What I think is more effective, though, Bruce, is to understand that they hit them most, just before daylight in the morning, and oftentimes just after dark. So if you know where a deer is bedding during the day or where it wants to go feed, and you know it's going to be hitting these scrapes right at dark or dawn or dusk, then you can still use that information to position yourself. Maybe a buck wants to go to a certain scrape and he's going to arrive there just after dark. Well, if you know where he's bedding during the day, you can position yourself between that bedding area and the scrape to intercept him during shooting hours. So even though they're not the most productive places to actually sit over, you still can use their locations to your benefit or to your knowledge to still help you kill a deer that wants to get to that scrape tomorrow.
And that's one thing about knowing your terrain and pinch points and funnels. And I can think of one of my favorite places to sit in Buffalo County, and it's a funnel, it's a river bottom, it's got everything a guy could want, and the way we'd set up is is exactly that. It's between the bedding area and the feeding area, and we know they're going to hit that scrape before they go to feed.
That's
Just
right.
we just know they are, and the food's a ways from there, so they're going to hit that. Maybe 20 minutes of light left. Well, you don't need seconds, for him to come in and do his thing, and you're sitting there at legal light, and the deal's over. And so you have to know your grounding. You have to know everything about that deer, and that's what I think why whitetail hunting is so amazing, because every year you learn something new. And you and I have been at it a long time, and every year we get schooled. Every year we learn something new and another piece of information. And then, of course, QDMA, is probably the best repository of pure whitetail research in the country. How does somebody get a hold of QDMA if they want to, follow up with Kip Adams or read some of the fantastic information you do have?
Well, we have a great website, which is QDMA.com. And the purpose of that is to provide a tremendous amount of information, for hunters to teach them more about how deer move, how deer see, how they hear, feeding patterns, how to enhance habitat. Our job is, and we look at it as, hey, the QDMA is where deer hunters belong, because we have this information to help them have better hunting experiences and all that. So if folks want to come and grab some of that information from our website, with articles, videos, etc., man, that's great, because we want to share that information. If they want to become a member and help support the leading deer organization that's fighting for deer hunters' rights, man, that's even better. And we welcome that as well.
And folks, I mentioned on Facebook Live, if you become a member of QDMA in the next month, send me your membership number and to whitetailrendezvous@gmail.com. And at the end of the month, I will be drawing a few people. We'll get some Buckwild coffee as our way of supporting QDMA. So, Kip, okay, so things are just starting to wind up. The boys, the youngsters are acting up and barn and doing some things. And if you spend any time at all in the woods or monitor your trail cameras, you're starting to see a little bit of daytime activity. But we're still away from the prime breeding season. So what do you call the next phase, of the rut?
Well, we know that throughout much of the United States, the main part of the rut, or at least when deer are being bred, is often occurs, in that mid to early November time. But leading up to that, we get to see all kinds of breeding behaviors in the woods. Number one being scrape activity is increasing. You're seeing more and more scrapes, which is a lot of fun, to watch and monitor and put a camera on. You're seeing a lot of young bucks on their feet chasing. For the first time, you'll see them harassing does. And we've really been seeing out here in northern Pennsylvania for the last week and a half. So a lot of harassing by those young bucks. The breeding isn't, the majority of breeding isn't started yet. I'm sure some does have been bred though, and because some just tend to come in earlier. But first thing you see is that increased scrape use, and you start seeing a lot more yearling bucks chasing some does. Then you start seeing, more does just kind of trying to get rid of those bucks that are being harassed. And once you start seeing that a little bit, then the peak breeding is getting close. And then you'll start seeing some of those older bucks spending more time checking those does and checking food sources where those does are. So at least in northern Pennsylvania right now, lots and lots of young buck activity and starting to push those a little bit. So you can call it what you want, the chase phase or the seeking phase or whatever it is. It's more accurate to say, man, we're seeing young bucks on their feet. We know that then that will blend into older bucks on their feet more, and then right into the majority of does actually breed.
So what hunting techniques or strategies should I be employing right now?
If you're looking for, certainly if you're looking to shoot a doe, they're all over food sources, because they know that it's going to be hard to feed here over the next couple of weeks. They're just being chased so much. The food sources are a tremendous place right now to be able to watch does, and then a lot of young bucks. Those older bucks, they're still hanging back, so they're still in a lot of cover. So I certainly would not hit my best places, or at least not my best places back in cover yet. So I personally am hunting, kind of the fringes of some of those better areas. Those older bucks, they still got to feed. So, and they're trying to put on a lot of weight right now as well, because once they get into the rut, they may go a month with eating very little. So food sources are important to them as well. They often don't want to be associated with all that mess that's those does and those young bucks running around. So, the big food plots, often not the place to see older bucks right now. Smaller food plots tucked in cover, or where those older bucks can kind of be by themselves and get away from that melee are often better choices right now for those older bucks. So great time too to be able to take, a doe or two to help get some meat in your freezer. Right now, when you're really not messing up any of your buck hunting, so that once those bucks, older guys really start moving, you can concentrate strictly on older bucks, knowing, hey, you've already got some meat in the freezer. You've done a good job from a deer manager, taking an antlerless deer that needs to be shot, if that's the case in your area, and then just really concentrate hard on bucks, really once Halloween hits.
On social media, everybody likes to put their grips and grins in, and it just seems that throughout the country, not just in Iowa or Kansas, but some big bucks have been taken, Western Kentucky. And you see, and everybody loves to see big bucks, and unfortunately, people don't put in the smaller buck, their first buck that they taken. I see a little bit of that, but certainly not enough of that. I've seen a lot more doe pictures this year, but it just seems from unscientific, observation that a lot of mature deer have already been taken in various parts of the country this year. Have you seen that trend? Or I know it's unscientific, folks, but it's just, what's popping up on social media.
I think we have seen that a little over the last few years, and I think as much as anything, what's related to that is hunters better understanding annual movement patterns of deer. So, for example, people often say, "Man, the rut is the best time to kill a big buck," and the rut is either an all or nothing thing in many cases. You can just have an outstanding day, just have deer all over you if you have a hot doe nearby. But I've spent a lot of early November days sitting in the stand, and seen almost nothing because all the bucks were away a little bit, with another doe. But what more people are catching on to, Bruce, is at the end of summer, when deer are really on that feed, fed pattern, those older bucks, they often, if they have good food and good cover close by, they don't move very far. So, those end of September, early October, that often is the best time to really pattern an older deer. And I think we have more hunters today understanding that and taking advantage of it, because once the rut starts, it's really difficult to pattern an individual deer because they can be anywhere. Whereas early season, those deer haven't been pressured yet. They haven't been pushed yet. Testosterone levels aren't as high yet. A lot of cases, you have a better chance to really pattern an individual deer you've been watching. So I think some of the increase of big deer early that we're seeing online over the last few years is partly just because you have more hunters understanding that, and that often is a better time to tag one of those big deer.
I've noticed a lot of velvet bucks, a lot being an unscientific word. But, I remember talking to Josh Honeycutt. He took a 178 pointer, just a monster of an 8-pointer. And it was in velvet, and it was on the feed bed routine. He long distance scouted it, saw where it came out, set up his tree stand, killed it the next night. Boom, it was over. And the deer, was, clueless. There was no pressure on him, nothing. It was his first sit ever on that buck, on that place, and it's just the perfect thing. So folks, the rut's exciting, and I love all day sits and get me in the right place. And, I just love being out in the woods in the fall, and it's a great thing to do. But think about some of these people that are taking these deer starting as soon as the season opens, all through the fall. They're taking mature whitetails, and we're mature whitetail, in my estimation, is 4.5 years old. Is that basically what your
Sure.
age date is?
Yeah, there's no real hard year on that. They often talk about young bucks as being 1 or 2 years old. Middle aged is 3 and 4, and then fully mature is 5 and older. But there's no doubt that a 4-year-old buck is mature. So, many cases, people talk about 3-year-olds as being mature. There's no real hard, fast rule for it. So it often is just what your personal goals are and kind of the crowd that you run with. But certainly, there's not many people who would pass a 4-year-old buck. They would look at that as a mature animal, and one well worthy to have the opportunity to shoot. So nobody's going to argue with that.
Yeah, one of the trends I remember reading last year was age class is increasing. Especially I know in Wisconsin, the age class is increasing, and that's a good thing. Why is that a good thing, Kip?
Well, in many cases, it's nice because we have an opportunity to hunt older deer, which hunters love. And for so many years, we over harvested very young bucks and just had terrible age structures through a lot of our deer herds, very unnatural age structures. Where now through QDM and, and educational efforts, we have it where suddenly, we're protecting more younger bucks, getting deer into those older classes. And you know what, Bruce? It's just being a good deer manager. Because if you look at how unhunted deer herds are, they have bucks that are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 year olds. If you look at the history, Native American middens that are trash piles, age structures of those deer were very balanced across all age classes. So as deer managers today, it's nice that we can have deer in all those age classes. And when I tell people, who are, even if you're not a big buck hunter, if you're a deer enthusiast, you should at least care that there are older bucks there, because that's how deer herds evolved. That's how deer herd social order works best. You have those older bucks out there, that can basically take care of, the deer herd and ensure that it's working the way that's supposed to through all those social mechanisms that we talked about. So, yeah, if you want to go shoot a yearling buck, that's fine. Please continue to hunt. But yeah, let's at least care that we have those, 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-old bucks in the herd, so that we're being good managers and creating a very natural situation for the deer herd.
Let's talk about techniques, and I love the rattle bucks. Grunt calling and grunt tubes, not so much. I'm just haven't had that much success at it. But rattling, I have. I had some sessions that just completely, oh my goodness, and that was a couple of times was one of the few times I said, man, I wish I had this on video, because nobody would basically believe it. You just get covered up.
Yeah.
And so when does rattling work best in your opinion?
Rattling often works best just as we're getting into the actual peak of breeding. And that's when, so there's, fewer does that are in heat than there are bucks in the area. So there's a lot of competition for those bucks, to be able to get that hot doe. That's often when rattling works the best. So oftentimes anywhere from, that Halloween in through that first week or 10 days of November is typically the time period that works best. Because you're telling other bucks, hey, there's 2 bucks over here fighting, which suggests there's probably a doe nearby, because they're not fighting just to fight. There likely is somebody there that time period that's drawing that attention. So that often is the best time period. As far as grunting, though, and I'm a huge fan of a grunt call. I never go deer hunting without a grunt call, just because it's fun to communicate with deer, and that may not be as exciting as rattling in a deer, but you can use it effectively over a wider range of times, because you can grunt to bucks, just as a starting all the way up through the peak of when rattling works well. So a little more versatility with it. You can be a little more discreet with your location by grunting. So, and deer are very social, as I've said earlier, so they communicate a lot through grunts. So I think that's a little more versatile than antlers, although I will agree with you, not nearly as exciting as hitting antlers together and actually rattling in a buck.
Do you have your grunt tube with you? Is it in your office?
I don't. It's in my pack downstairs in my plastic tote. So,
right, and I didn't think about that. Can you voice grunt? Sort of kind
sure.
of the different sounds?
Absolutely. And
okay.
And some people, there are grunt tubes on the market that say, you can adjust it so that it's a very young buck, it's an older buck, it's a doe based strictly on tone, and that's absolutely not true. I have spent a lot of time at deer research facilities when I was in graduate school, so I've got to hear a lot of bucks grunt. I have grunted in deer and actually rattled in deer in the woods that I joked about. This is years ago. Called in a really old deer that was running with a very young buck, and now a rattle. I could immediately hear this thing grunting, and it was a really wimpy type grunt, like almost like a fawn grunt. And so in my mind, I'm thinking it's this younger of these 2 bucks in this area. So I stood up in my tree stand, I grabbed my bow just in case, and lo and behold, this big 140-inch 4 or 5-year-old deer jumps out in front of me. And I joke forever about it, saying, he's like the Mike Tyson of the deer world. He had this little wimpy voice, and he was the biggest deer in the area. So there's not a lot of credence to, the tone or the sounds. It's not like the biggest, meanest buck have the deepest grunts. But so there's a lot of variation. But in general, something like a lot of buck grunts will sound something like, So there's not just a hard sound. It has to be, I think kind of like with turkey calling on the duck calling or waterfowl calling, a lot of times it's the inflection or the the intention that you put into the call is more important than just the sound. Because I can sit there and go, and that kind of sounds like a grunt. But if I put a little more energy into it or excitement, it sounds like a eh, eh, eh. Suddenly to a deer, it sounds, ooh, there's a little bit of livelihood to it rather than just that kind of a pre-recorded sound. So I don't get cued in or tied in too hard to, ooh, that's just the right sound or it's just the right volume. Deer make all kinds of different sounds. So I tend to call fairly a lot while we're hunting, particularly during the rut, because as these bucks are moving, they can be covering large distances. So it's not uncommon at all for me to grunt, once or twice every 10 minutes during, a multi-hour sit, because there's going to be deer coming in and out of, hearing range, throughout the course of that. So I tell people, as long as you're not crazy with it, you're not going to scare deer with it, and you'll be amazed, the attention that you might get. So it's a fun way to interact with deer. It's a fun way to continue hunting, and particularly for kids or new hunters, it's a great way for them to be excited and be involved with it. So, and I tell folks, get a grunt call, practice with it just a little bit so you feel comfortable, and once you're out there, absolutely use it. Have a good time with it.
Tending grunts. That's a little bit different than just
It is. In bucks, you're right. And bucks will make a lot of different grunts. So just a basic grunt, just being like an. They will also grunt, whether they will almost challenge another one, where it's kind of and where they're almost locked down to somebody else, or they know another one's there, and just kind of a little bit of a warning, like, hey, I'm not happy you're here. I'm up here. So there's longer grunts where you're gonna be like, and they might throw in a call to another buck as well, kind of like a. And a lot of times, Bruce, what I like is at the end of the grunt, particularly if I am trying to call to another buck that I can see at the end of it, kind of get a sharp pitch at the end. So, like if I told you, I don't like you, I say, you know what, Bruce, I don't like you. That's very different if I say, you know what, Bruce, I don't like you. So, like kind of that at the end can often just put a little bit more emphasis on that grunt to another deer, and sometimes be all it takes to have that deer that's standing out to a little bit ways be like, you know what, I just absolutely don't appreciate being talked to that way. So I'm going to go over and check that out. So the inflection in the calls or your attitude in the calls, in many cases, are more important than the actual sound that you make.
So the tending grunt, is that a series of grunts all together when they following the doe? Is that what it's supposed to do?
It certainly can be, yes. And that's a lot easier to make on a call than with my voice.
Right.
But and so it's almost like you're starting and stopping multiple grunts right in a row that are real short. So it's that. So yes, and they don't. I have seen them do that numerous times when they have a doe right nearby. There's a lot of things that deer will do to communicate back and forth, either to a buck, to a doe that he sees, or to other bucks that are in the area. Or in some cases, they're just calling even if they don't see anything. So, there's not a specific tending grunt, specific challenge grunt, specific regular grunt. There's a lot of different things that they will do. Yeah, I don't know if you're a turkey hunter, but I see that the fan behind you, so I'm guessing you are. But just like there's a yelp, there's a cluck, there's a kiki, there's a putt, but actually calling is about a lot more than just being able to do one of those four. It's putting them together and actually talking to the animal. Same thing with deer. Same thing with deer calling.
Folks, it's a conversation, and the only way you're going to learn the conversation is listen to the conversation. And we're talking about deer communicating with each other, and it takes a lot of time, and Kip spent his whole lifetime around deer. But, sometimes just go and listen to deer and try things, and once you hear them, because elk are wonderful teachers. I mean, they really are, because you can hear them from miles away, literally, in the right conditions, or you can't hear them and they're 200 yards away. And Kip shot a wonderful DIY Colorado bull, and one of his most revered trophies. All his trophies are revered, but his bull in Colorado is certainly majestic. But that's how I learned to talk, because elk talk, and Larry D. Jones. I'm just trying to think of the guys, Wayne Carlton, that kicked off elk hunting, back in the late 70s, early 80s with turkey calls, kiki runs. I remember Wayne Carlton was kiki run,
Yeah.
and he just when I did a kiki run, he busted it right into a bugle, and that was the beginning of elk calling, really. And there was a couple other guys that were in the mix, but calling and vocalizing with the game you're hunting is is very exciting. That's why I think people like turkey hunting, because you're vocalizing and you're actually communicating with your quarry. And if you've never tried it, really, um, learn how to do it. There's plenty of tapes, there's plenty of YouTube instruction materials, and I'm sure QDMA has instruction materials on, the sounds of deer.
Yeah, we used to have a great VHS tape for all of your listeners or viewers that remember VHS. On grunt, snort, wheeze, and it was all the communication sounds like the deer made, and it had grunts, snorts, and all. So it was great. It was really good. A lot of it was from the University of Georgia, work that Dr. Carl Miller had done. So in addition to being helpful, I mean, it can absolutely make you a better hunter, and it's just a ton of fun just to understand what's going on. And to the casual hunter, they would have no idea that deer make all these sounds or that they communicate anywhere near the way that they do. So yeah, it's a ton of fun for sure to understand all the different sounds that they make and the reasons for them.
I've heard that way too many times.
Cool.
and snort wheezing, they're just they're not happy.
For sure. Actually, I tell you, the very first time I ever heard it, I was in graduate school at the University of New Hampshire. I was a supervisor of the Brentwood Wildlife Research Facility, and we had the oldest buck we had at the time was a 3.5-year-old. He was a giant deer. He was about 300 pounds, and we would cut their antlers off as soon as they shed out every fall to protect the people working there. And our vet used to always tell me, you should never go in these pastures alone. And I knew all the deer, and I was in control of the place. I'm like, yeah. Well, I remember it was a Friday night. He stopped out at the facility. Everything good? Yep. All the deer okay? All right, I'm going home for the weekend. And I was the only graduate student there at the time. The other ones were at school working. And I went out into the pasture, 3-acre pasture, to take a couple of pictures. And I saw this buck, this 3-year-old buck called Chestnut, walking toward me. And I said, hey, Chestnut, how are you doing? I took a picture of him. He's still walking. And I remember this is back when you had an actual camera that you put film in. I picked it up to take again. And looking through the finder, I saw him charge. And it hit me like, ooh, this is not good. And long story short, I was close enough to a tree that I was able to get up into a tree. He kept me up this tree. Luckily, there was a branch that I could jump and grab and then stand on. He kept me up there for over an hour. And he would circle the tree. And what it was, he had a doe that was in heat, I'm sure. He would snort, wheeze, and then charge the tree and just hit it. Boom! And he tore all the bark off the tree by charging it, keeping me up there. And he snored, wheezed, I don't know, 50 times. I had never heard that in my life. And partly because I grew up in Pennsylvania, we didn't get older bucks. They didn't do that. So when I remember when he finally left and I got down, sprinted to the pen, the gate to get out, and called my advisor to let him know what had just happened. And anyway, during the course of the conversation, I was telling him about this crazy noise he was making. And I remember he said, I think that's like that snort wheeze that some people in Texas talk about. And, years later, start to learn about this and start seeing some older deer and realize, yeah, that was a grunt, snort, wheeze. But first time I ever heard it. So this would have been like in maybe 1994. And so look how far we've come today. Many hunters today have experienced it in the woods because we have better age structures of deer. And, I've watched deer do that, have used that to call deer in. So, so it's a great sound. If you're in the woods, man, you're in a good spot. If you hear that, first time I ever heard it, I was not in a good spot, but I sure enjoy hearing it now when I'm in the woods.
That's a great story. And it just, this whole show is about hunting whitetails, but we're sharing, learning about the whitetail and everything about them, their mannerisms, they're highly social, and they also talk. And it's up to us to learn what all that means. And the better you do that, and the people that are figuring it out just become better hunters. And is their experience any better than sitting on a stump and waiting for deer to come by? Probably not, because that's your hunt, and that's a nice thing. But you can move forward, and all of a sudden you realize, wow, when a buck bristles up and gets all angry, and it's neat to see. I mean, it's neat to be there, and it's part.
And they all have their own personality. Yeah, they all have their own personality. Some, older bucks are very shy. Some are aggressive. Some younger bucks, are more aggressive. So, each has his own personality. And then same with the does. We can just tell the bucks apart better, obviously, with the antlers. But yeah, so even older deer, You can hunt them differently, whether they tend to be, movers and shakers or real shy and secretive. So, scouting certainly helps. Game camera certainly helps. All of that can help you put the pieces together to help you get within bow range of one of those deer.
So let's wrap up the show with this question. What do you know today that you wish you knew 10 years ago when it comes to hunting deer?
Oh, man, we know so much more today about how deer move and how they react to pressure. But, man, back in the day, I would go hunting every single chance I had. Never, ever pay attention to which way the wind was blowing before or after or even during the hunt. And, just go out. And I'm sure, Bruce, I scared so many deer before I ever saw them. And then certainly then negatively impacted future hunts. So I think if I knew one thing today, or I could go back, and give a new hunter this, because, if nothing else, pay attention to the wind when you go, so that you're not scaring all these deer that you would never get an opportunity to see. And in its simplest form, some people get really heavy into all the scent control stuff. Wherever you are on that gradient, whether you want to pay attention a little bit to, being ultra conservative about your scent control, very least, pay attention to the wind. Try to keep the wind blowing in your face so that where you think deer are going to come from, or upwind from you, and you will be so much more successful. I can't even imagine how many deer that I spooked in the past, just because I didn't pay any attention at all to that. So, that's easy to do. It doesn't cost you any money. And just by being a little bit smarter, you can be way more effective, seeing deer and shooting deer. So that's my tip. And I would have seen a lot more deer in my career if I would have known that, 15 or 20 years ago.
Kip Adams, one more time, how will somebody become a member of QDMA?
They can go right to our website, which is qdma.com, and join, or they can call our national office at 800-209-DEER. QDMA is where deer hunters belong, and man, we fight for deer herds and deer hunters so that we have a long opportunity to hunt deer in the future. So we say, if you're a deer hunter, man, you belong with us. So at the very least, you can come check out all the educational resources that we have on our website, to help make you a better deer hunter and increase your chances for crossing paths with that deer of your dreams this fall. So, good luck. Certainly be safe in the woods, and good luck to all your listeners this fall, man. I've been a wildlife biologist for 20 some years, but I am first and foremost a deer hunter. So I'm into this thick as you are, Bruce, and it's certainly a great time of year.
Kip Adams, once again, thank you so much for being a guest on Whitetail Rendezvous. Look forward to seeing you at ATA in a few months, and just thank you for everything that QDMA does, because they are, the leader in whitetail science, whitetail research, whitetail communicating about whitetails, and what you do throughout the country is very admirable. So thank you for being a guest, sir.
All right. Absolutely, Bruce, anytime, and good luck to you in the woods.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.